Welcome to the informative channel, and today we will discuss the topic: the rise of Islam in Cambodia, hidden history revealed. The story of Islam in Cambodia begins far earlier than many imagine, interwoven with ancient trade routes, imperial collapse, and cultural resilience. Long before the rise of modern Cambodia, the region was a bustling crossroads of civilizations. Malay traders, Indian missionaries, Chinese diplomats, and Arab merchants all passed through its ports and river towns. Among them came the first seeds of Islamic faith, brought not with swords or fanfare, but through whispered conversations on crowded ships and quiet prayers at makeshift mosques along the Mekong. Though today Muslims represent only a small fraction of Cambodia's population, their presence is far from marginal. It is part of a deeper historical current, one that has flowed steadily for over a millennium, mostly unnoticed by official chronicles but preserved in oral traditions, familial memory, and sacred texts hidden away in village madrasas. Evidence suggests that Muslims first reached the Cambodian region around the 8th or 9th century, although there is no consensus among historians. These early visitors were likely Arab or Persian traders, who by then had established strong links across the Indian Ocean trade network. Their influence may not have immediately altered local society, but it planted roots in the form of ideas, rituals, and vocabulary that would echo through the centuries. More influential was the migration of the Cam people, a seafaring ethnic group whose homeland in what is now central Vietnam was destroyed by Vietnamese expansion. In the 15th century, the Cam kingdom of Champa fell to Dai Viet forces, prompting waves of Cam refugees to seek asylum in Cambodia. Many of these Chams were already Muslims, having converted over previous centuries through trade with Arab and Malay Muslims. Unlike the royal elites of Angkor, who clung to Hindu-Buddhist cosmologies, the Cam brought with them a monotheistic worldview that emphasized community, scholarship, and a deep sense of cultural preservation. The Cam refugees were initially welcomed by the Cambodian kings, who saw them as useful military allies and economic contributors. Many were settled along the banks of the Tonle Sap and the Mekong River, where they built villages, raised families, and continued to practice Islam. Over time, these communities became self-sustaining, though they maintained loyalty to the Cambodian crown. They developed unique forms of religious practice that blended Sunni Islamic orthodoxy with local customs, giving rise to a distinctly Southeast Asian form of Islam. The traditional Cam mosque, for instance, bore architectural influences from both Islamic and Khmer design, and religious ceremonies were often interwoven with local ritual elements. One of the most extraordinary episodes in Cambodian history occurred in the mid-17th century, when a Khmer king embraced Islam and took on the title Sultan Ibrahim. Born as Prince Ponhi Chan, he had spent time with Muslim communities, including Cam advisors and Malay traders, and eventually converted to Islam. In 1642, he ascended the throne and officially became known as Ramatha Pardi I, a name that signified both royal authority and Islamic allegiance. His reign is one of the few moments in Southeast Asian history when a monarch from a traditionally Hindu-Buddhist society adopted Islam not merely for political expediency but seemingly as a genuine spiritual choice. Ramatha Pardi established diplomatic ties with Muslim powers, such as the Sultanate of Johor, and welcomed Muslim traders to Phnom Penh. However, his reign was short-lived and met with significant resistance from the Buddhist elite, who saw his conversion as a betrayal of national tradition. By 1658, a rebellion led by rival princes and supported by Vietnamese and Dutch forces deposed him. He died in captivity, and his reign was largely erased from official Cambodian history. Though brief, Ramathipardi's rule had lasting consequences. It legitimized Islam within the Cambodian court, if only temporarily, and fostered deeper relations between local Muslims and foreign Islamic powers. More importantly, it provided a powerful symbol for future generations of Cambodian Muslims, who would cite his reign as proof that Islam could thrive even in a land dominated by other faiths. After his fall, however, Cambodian Islam receded once more into the shadows, becoming a religion of the margins, practiced quietly by Cam villagers and ignored by central authorities. Still, the Cam communities endured, preserving their identity through careful transmission of language, religious texts, and oral history. The following centuries were marked by foreign domination and internal decline. Cambodia became a pawn in regional power struggles between Siam, Thailand, and Vietnam, both of which viewed the Kham Muslims with suspicion. Vietnamese rulers in particular distrusted Islam and at times imposed restrictions on Kham religious practice. Nevertheless, the Kham continued to migrate into Cambodia, especially during periods of persecution in Vietnam. By the 19th century, a network of Kham Muslim villages stretched from Kampong Kham to Kampot, each with its own imam, school, and religious council. These communities maintained links with the broader Muslim world, particularly through Malay connections. Pilgrims made the long journey to Mecca, and religious teachers traveled between Cambodia and Malaysia, bringing new interpretations of Islam that sometimes clashed with local traditions. One of the most fascinating aspects of Cambodian Islam is the survival of the Khan Imam San sect, a unique Islamic community that diverged from mainstream Sunni practice. The Khan Imam San, named after their founder Imam San, follow a religious calendar that includes Friday prayers only once a year, during the celebration of Hari Raya Haji. Their beliefs emphasize ritual purity, ancestral reverence, and oral transmission of sacred knowledge. For decades, the Khan Imam San were viewed with skepticism by both Sunni and state authorities, who saw their practices as deviant or heretical. Yet the sect survived, especially in isolated areas such as Kampong Shnang province, where government influence was minimal. Today, the Khan Imam San are recognized by the Cambodian government as a legitimate Muslim sect, and they continue to practice their distinctive faith with pride and autonomy. The darkest period for Cambodia's Muslims came in the 1970s, under the brutal regime of the Khmer Rouge. Pol Pot's revolution sought to destroy religion, ethnicity, and memory itself in pursuit of a pure agrarian communist state. Muslims were targeted for extermination alongside Buddhists, Christians, and ethnic minorities. Kham communities, in particular, were decimated. Mosques were destroyed, Qurans burned, and imams executed. The Khmer Rouge forcibly disbanded villages, outlawed Islamic prayer, and forced Kham families to eat pork as a method of humiliation. Estimates suggest that over 100,000 Kham Muslims, nearly half their population, were killed during the genocide. Oral testimonies collected after the fall of the regime describe scenes of unimaginable horror, but also moments of quiet resistance. Some Chams continued to pray in secret, burying Qurans in the ground or reciting verses silently while working in the fields. When the Khmer Rouge fell in 1979, the survivors faced the daunting task of rebuilding not only their homes but their very sense of identity. Many Kham children had grown up without ever hearing Arabic or attending a madrasa. Elders who had memorized the Quran were few, and religious infrastructure was in ruins. Yet despite the devastation, the Kham Muslims showed extraordinary resilience. With help from international Islamic charities, especially from Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Middle East, they rebuilt mosques, established schools, and began to retrain a new generation of religious leaders. Islamic education became a cornerstone of post-genocide recovery. Children learned both Khmer and Arabic, and imams were once again trained in theology, jurisprudence, and recitation. Some Kham youth traveled abroad for religious studies, returning with new interpretations that reshaped community dynamics. The return of orthodoxy, however, was not without controversy. Tensions emerged between conservative teachers trained in Saudi Arabia and traditionalists who adhered to older Kham practices. Today, Islam in Cambodia remains a small but vital part of the national fabric. The majority of Cambodian Muslims are Sunni, following the Shafi'i school of Islamic jurisprudence, but there remains considerable diversity in practice and belief. Kham Muslims continue to preserve their language and cultural identity, even as they integrate into the broader Cambodian society. Many serve in government, education, and business. There is even a modest Islamic media presence, with radio stations and publications aimed at Muslim audiences. Relations between Muslims and the Buddhist majority are generally peaceful, though not without occasional friction. In recent years, the Cambodian government has made efforts to include Muslim leaders in interfaith dialogues and public ceremonies. Prime Minister Hun Sen has repeatedly emphasized religious tolerance and has welcomed foreign investment in Islamic education and infrastructure. Thanks for watching the video.